Tucker Carlson and a Russian dictator, love or money? This is what we're gonna talk about today. Most part of this video is included in this video, Foreign Agents of Putin Part 2, Episode 2 USA and beyond, and except for the beginning and the end. So if you already seen the video, you can just watch the beginning and the end. Hello everyone, I'm Elina, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share, write comments. Let's make truth available for everyone. This is what helps to promote it on YouTube. Thank you.
Because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Because
Putin's pawn, Tucker Carlson support exposed. This is what we're going to talk about in this video. And as you know, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow and had an interview with Vladimir Putin. But we wouldn't discuss that particular interview all that much. You will see the relationship between Tucker Carlson and Putin and what happened after the interview. Before we're gonna talk about Tucker Carlson, in case somebody doesn't know who he is, this is what Peter Zeihan, if I pronounce his name right, has to say about Tucker Carlson.
A couple things to keep in mind about Tucker Carlson. Number one, he's been fired from every journalistic job that he has ever had for making things up. And his legal defense when he was working at Fox in recent years was that he's not a journalist at all. So he's not responsible for any sort of fact-based reporting. In fact, he literally called himself a propagandist. He's been a Russian shill for several years. So the idea that he was being a Russian shill in Russia doesn't really shock me. And it was just an example of how Putin can get his message out in front of a relatively favorable audience in the United States to stir the political pot and keep the United States unable to make a broad-based response to anything that the Russians are doing. And this is not a new program. The Russians have been doing this ever since they formed the bot farm over a decade ago.
Well, Russia was doing it since it was part of the USSR. USSR was doing it for decades, so Putin didn't invent anything new. And Tucker Carlson is a propagandist. He is not a journalist. And I have met them in the USSR from the KGB. So all the modern days propagandists basically using Soviet tactics like whataboutism and many others, which I told about it in my other videos. This is the opinion on Tucker Carlson by Anne Applebaum, which is extremely honorable and good person. Great scientist, historian, who actually know Russian, who spent time in Russian archives and Soviet archives when they opened up, wrote a brilliant book about Gulag, Russian prisons and so on. The person who actually know what is happening, actually know Russia, and know a lot of things was done by USSR and Russia. Tucker Carlson has been useful to Viktor Orban, the dictator of Hungary, because he helps him hide his corruption behind the veil of culture war, as I wrote in September, reposting because Carlson is in Moscow, doing the same favor for a much bloodier, more dangerous autocrat. This is a useful article you're welcome to read yourself. Tucker Carlson is only one part of Putin's disinformation war in Western media. Practically everything Carlson says is a lie. And I could go on and on and on disproving it one by one by one by one. But you're welcome to read it for yourself. And I want to underline that Carlson lies all the time. About everything. And off the air, Fox News stars blasted the election fraud claims they peddled. Practically all of them. Not practically all of them. In this article you can find out about this more. And you can find out from transcripts how much Tucker Carlson, despite that he says that he's pro-Trump, despises Trump. How much he's against Trump. How much he hates Trump. Which is for a reason. But for the money, he was continuing praising Trump and spreading out his lies. As much as he now spreading lies of Putin. This is another post of Bill Browder, which I agree with. I wish people would stop referring to Tucker Carlson as a journalist. A journalist is someone who is objective. Tucker Carlson has an agenda, and brazenly lies to support that agenda. His lies cost Fox News $787 million. His work in Moscow for Putin will cost the world far more than that. I agree.
because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Like, why do I care?
I'll tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Because those of us who are watching, myself, who think preserving democracy is important. When Dick Cheney said what the Russians did was an attack,
I don't care.
It was a warlike attack on the U.S., and I think if Donald Trump gets off the hook on this, he's going to put the arm on the Chinese and everybody else.
So Tucker Carlson doesn't care that it's Russian attack, not only on Ukraine. It's Russian attack on everything. Include property you possess. Include for what you worked all your life. So if there are no international laws, if there are no laws at all, any country, any person who can come and grab everything they want. This was happening centuries ago. That's what the world get rid of. They installed the laws for the reason. And in the United States, in Canada, in every democratic country, property is protected. Rights of people protected. In Russia, it isn't. And I proved it to you in this video. Whatever happening in Russia, if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, he will go further. And the United States eventually would be next. This is why the war in Ukraine is very important. The nuclear arsenal in Russia is big. And if at least few of the nukes still working, they can reach United States. This is why. Americans without diplomatic immunity working in the interests of the United States who step foot in Russia tend to get arrested and imprisoned on fabricated charges. Like, for example, Evan Gershkovich, I can add from myself to this. Tucker Carlson is in Moscow receiving VIP treatment from the Kremlin regime. So another disgusting lowlife which Russia embrace, like it's embrace every disgusting lowlife who's supporting Putin's propaganda and genocidal war in Ukraine. I wonder how they sleep at night. I agree. Now that Tucker Carlson is in Moscow would be the perfect time to revoke his US citizenship. Yeah, maybe he should go to the war in Ukraine to support Putin there. Everything Putin and Carlson saying in this clip is a lie. But you're welcome to watch it.
I haven't seen anybody do that.
The West started the war and we used force in order to stop it.
If there is any single American who deserves scorn and, yes, blame for the invasion of Ukraine, it would be Joe Biden.
The Ukrainian people have become hostages of their Western masters.
Ukraine is not a democracy. It's a client state of the Biden administration.
The U.S. were training on the future theater of military actions by owning biological laboratories in Ukraine.
Military biological programs are under development in Ukraine, financed by the U.S. Defense Ministry.
Western countries were setting military bases on our border.
The Russians don't want American missiles on their border. They don't want a hostile government next door.
NATO took specific expansions to our borders.
Getting Ukraine to join NATO was the key to inciting war with Russia.
The elites of the West are not hiding their goals. They are trying to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia.
The Biden administration wanted all along a regime change war against Russia.
The initiators of the sanctions are punishing themselves.
So it's not Vladimir Putin who's getting punished, it's American citizens. It's you.
The West provoked the growth of prices in their own countries, collapse of energy sector.
Gas prices are already the highest they have ever been in history. So the price of natural gas and the price of electricity and food and everything else you buy.
I think we should probably take the side of Russia if we have to choose between Russia and Ukraine. That is my view.
We're on Putin's side.
As I proved to you, none of this is true. Biden wasn't even president when Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014. Period. And everything else is as much lie as I said to you in the beginning. So this is what Carlson is supporting. This is made up Putin's lies. Putin attacked Ukraine, not the West. And I have whole videos about NATO, especially truth and lies about NATO. You're welcome to watch when Putin himself is saying that it's no big deal if Ukraine join NATO. Later on he said no big deal if Finland and Sweden will join NATO, and so on. And Russia wanted to join NATO. So none of this is true. Yet Tucker Carlson is spreading that lie. Meanwhile, American traitor Tucker Carlson showed up in Russia, interviewing Putin, and started lying even before the interview started, by saying that, oh, Nobody wants to interview Putin. I am the only one. Turned out to be was disproved even by Peskov and Kremlin, saying that lots of people want to interview Putin. They're just not gullible, useful idiots. That's why they're not allowed to interview Putin. So I might make a video about it, but I haven't bothered to watch it. And I think Jake Broad did a great job to explaining that, and many other people. And it was failure on both sides. And in a way, I'm grateful to Tucker Carlson to show in this interview, especially on banned in Russia Twitter, which is a fascist and horrible thing to be on. And that's why it's forbidden in Russia, according to Putin. Both of them was look bad on the interview. Putin tried to insult and showing weak Tucker Carlson, and showing how much Russia is so grandiose and he is nobody, basically. For the pleasure of Russian audience, insulting an American, how wonderful. And Tucker Carlson basically showed Putin for who he is. Old man from the bunker who doesn't know history and trying to invent stuff, even knowing that everybody in the world know about it, and it's not gonna work for anybody. Giving a lecture for half an hour about fake history Putin just invented. Yet Tucker Carlson didn't basically say anything, didn't contradict Putin. Especially when Putin basically admitted that Hitler was right about invading Poland, using the arguments of rapist. Well, it was her fault, I just had to do it. So Hitler had to attack Poland. And meanwhile saying that, yeah, Evan Gershkovich, American journalist, is a hostage in Russia. And if you're being nice to us, maybe we'll release him, but if not, well, Putin basically admit that the fellow journalist, Evan Gershkovich, is a hostage, Russian hostage, who was arrested by political reasons and pretend that he is a spy. But I kinda give Tucker Carlson a credit that he even brought up the question. I wasn't thinking he gonna dare. Look how much Tucker Carlson admires Putin, Russian dictator, who keeping Russia in line for 24 years by murdering, torturing people, destroying constitution and law, like a mafia state. This is what he is admiring.
Simply the leader of the country, who of course is impressive. It's the largest landmass in the world. And it's wildly diverse, linguistically, culturally, religiously. It's hard to run a country like that for 24 years, whether you like it or not. So an incapable person couldn't do that. He is very capable, and many of you know him, and you know that. What was radicalizing, very shocking, and very disturbing for me was the city of Moscow, where I'd never been, the biggest city in Europe, 13 million people. And it is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the U.S. government and barely had electricity.
That isn't true. Neither one. First of all, in the 80s, Moscow did have electricity, and it was big city and the biggest in Russia. And everything from Russia and USSR was dragging into Moscow, and Moscow was the wealthiest place. And number two is, he must have haven't seen cities in North America. I personally traveled through 42 states of United States. And I have seen a lot of big cities, and many of them very beautiful and gorgeous cities. And in any other countries as well. And keep in mind that Moscow is way older than any city in North America as a country.
And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically, its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen? And at a certain point, I don't think the average person cares as much about abstractions as about the concrete reality of his life. And if you can't use your subway, for example, as many people are afraid to in New York City because it's too dangerous, you have to sort of wonder, like, isn't that the ultimate measure of...
First of all, no, it's not the ultimate measure. Second of all, have you been in metro in New York? I have. New York is one of the friendliest, big cities I have ever been. You hardly even have a chance to stop and open the map before somebody of New York people appear beside you and offer you help. And I used metro in New York. It's not as glorious and beautiful in Moscow metro, but it's normal metro. I perfectly fine traveled with a child and a family through New York metro. So if you paranoid people afraid of using metro, that's nothing to do with Putin or Russia or anything like that. And Trump is steering fear in Americans that much that people in Iowa, of all places, afraid of immigrants. unbelievable. If Tucker Carlson is thinking that he's seen a real Moscow, he's very, very much mistaken. He only was seeing, like in the USSR, what he allowed to see. And I want to add some exclusive thing about it. Nobody else will tell you about this because they don't have that kind of experience. I personally saw the FSB coming to my university and recruiting students, especially good students who knows English, to be representatives of Soviet Union, to meet foreign people who come into my city of Volgograd. These people were supposed to walk in pairs, boy and girl, pretend that they are boyfriend and girlfriend, just saying that they are. So in case foreign people who show up in Volgograd and wanted to meet foreigners, they could see good Soviet people and meet good Soviet children, basically. And if they decided to invite them in the hotel for a cup of coffee or some exchange of souvenirs, it would have looked appropriate. And nothing sexually would be, nobody would think about it, because they kind of couple, and some other, for example, elderly couple came to see Volgograd. They would like to meet these young people. It would be appropriate to come and visit. And up to that extent, Soviet government lied to foreign people who is during perestroika coming to see Russia. They really thought that they will see real Russia and they will see average Russian people. Average Russian people wasn't even allowed to talk to foreigners. They wouldn't even talk to foreigners. And when he talking about safety in Moscow, it's just outright disgusting. I just saw one other Putin's puppet showing up with his Russian girlfriend, probably from FSB, walking in Moscow and saying, oh, how safe it is, how wonderful. And we could see, just literally see in his video, that right behind them, there are two guys walking like a bodyguards, which is probably from the FSB. So if you're telling me, a Soviet and Russian person who came from the USSR and Russia, that somebody allowed him, Tucker Carlson, famous American, walk around Moscow without KGB following him step by step, to at least to make sure nothing happened to him, of course he felt very safe, because he has guards walking after him. Even if he didn't notice them, it doesn't mean that they were not there. They were. I can guarantee you that, 100%. Nobody would allow him to go alone around, wandering around Moscow and see whatever he wants to see. He only saw what he was showed. So, I have seen those useful idiots before in my past. And Volgograd isn't even Moscow. It's also 1 million people. It's 1 million people city. It's a capital of the region. But in Moscow, it's way worse. Besides, in USSR, foreign people could only live in certain hotel, which called in tourist, which is mean иностранный турист, foreign tourist. And that was completely under the wing of the KGB at the time, who was watching every single foreign tourist coming to the USSR, which wasn't all that many. Now there are many coming. You can't really put KGB officer to everyone, but to Tucker Carlson they really, really will. And they did. So here's to the talks about safety. And besides, I was walking with my family and a child in the middle of the night in New York City. And nothing happened to us. It's perfectly safe. Otherwise we wouldn't have done that. So maybe Americans should be less paranoid about their safety. Many of them living in the safest country in the world. One of the safest countries. Well, Canada is probably safer. Or some other countries. But at least I traveled through 42 states. And most of the time, I hardly ever felt unsafe. Maybe a couple moments where it was kind of... but most of the places, there was no problem whatsoever. That is why, if Tucker Carlson really that useful idiot, but I think he's smarter than that. He's just lying. And pretending for Putin, and for Putin's sake, promoting Putin. In fact, America is a way safer place, and Canada, for that matter, than many places in Russia. If not for his KGB bodyguards, I mean FSB nowadays, he wouldn't feel all that safe among Russian people who actually, some of them really hate Americans because they told that it's America who started this war and killing people in Russia. And it's American President Biden who is guilty that Russian entrances in Russian buildings, some people stealing light bulbs and peeing in these places because there are no public toilets around and people have to do it somewhere. So they do it in the entrances of the apartment buildings if there is no code lock on the door. But Russians probably thinking it's American president personally coming to Russia and peeing in their apartment buildings entrances. So please, Americans, tell your presidents, stop coming to Russia and peeing in our apartment buildings. That would be very nice. This reposted by Bill Browder, who knows exactly what Russia is. And I can't say it better than him. Tucker, Moscow hasn't been safe for my friend Sergei Magnitsky, Boris Nemtsov, or Vladimir Karamurza. Or Navalny, I would add, whose lives has been destroyed for criticizing Putin. If you are Russian and say the same things about Putin that you said about Biden, you will already be 6 feet under. Or nowhere in Siberian jail like Navalny. Or 7 years in jail like Sasha Skachelenko, who just put in the market, she put price tags with information about the war in Ukraine. She got 7 years in jail. Wow, how safe country Russia is. Unbelievable. And Tucker Carlson must have haven't stepped a foot outside of Moscow, or he would see outdoor toilets, broken streets, and people living in poverty. So, this is complete propaganda lie. This is all what you need to know at this point in time about Tucker Carlson and his visit to Moscow. After the interview with Tucker Carlson, Putin was complaining to Russian TV, to Russian host, about how bad it was, and that Tucker Carlson didn't ask him such difficult questions and so on. So it didn't work out for neither one, neither for Tucker Carlson nor for Putin. But Putin basically, if he wanted to see the real journalists who would ask real questions, he would invite Christiane Amanpour or Steve Rosenberg or somebody else who are actually real journalists and who would ask real questions. Putin and Peskov claim that they invited Carlson for a reason, because he is a Kremlin's puppet. That's exactly why he was invited to Russia, and nobody else was. And the cherry on top, as Jake Bro said in the past, Tucker Carlson went to Moscow probably because he couldn't receive his payments from Russia because of the sanctions, so he had to go there in person and pick up bricks of cash, which Russian government is paying, Putin's government is paying Tucker Carlson to betray his country. And we have the proofs now. Here's Tucker Carlson working hard for Russian pays or any other favors he received from Russia, working hard to prove his new master Putin that he is a loyal servant. The United States Senate passed $60 billion bill in military assistance for Ukraine. The military aid package now has to be scheduled for vote by Speaker Johnson in the House of Representatives to pass, which he wouldn't, because Trump told him not to. So Donald Trump and Elon Musk are doing everything they can to stop this bill in the House to help Russia win this war. This is post Elon Musk is spreading Tucker Carlson interview.
It became very clear to anyone paying attention several months ago that Ukraine cannot win its war against Russia. The Ukrainian military will not be able, even with Western backing, hundreds of billions of dollars of it, to expel the Russian military from parts of eastern Ukraine.
This is actually not true. Ukraine actually winning the war right now. And if Tucker Carlson believed Putin all of a sudden, or that blind, or that stupid, or that corrupt, well, it's his own fault. Ukraine is winning that war, and it can win, and it will win, because Ukraine doesn't have any other choice. Ukraine either win or die. This is how it is. And I proved it on my channel many times.
Russia has 100 million more in population than Ukraine does. And that means that further support from the West for the Ukrainian military only means more dead Ukrainians and a further degraded Western economy in the U.S.
This is a lie as well. Yes, Russia has more people, but they don't have weapons enough. They don't have enough to arm them, and if Ukraine will get enough weapons, they can and they will defeat Russia. And absolutely opposite of what he said, that Putin doesn't want peace. Putin will not stop. Putin wants ceasefire to bring more Russian troops on the front and kill more Ukrainians, and more Russians will die. And he is proving it right now, storming little town of Avdiivka near Donetsk, which is he is trying to do for 10 years. And they can't capture that city. All Russian might, with all Russian troops, cannot capture a little city for 10 years. And now, because Putin wants to be so-called re-elected, which isn't even a real election in any way, but for him to get at least something to show that he captured something, right now over 10,000 Russians already dead, maybe even around 20, I'm not sure. Only around Avdiivka alone. And Putin keeps throwing them in the meat grinder, and he will keep throwing them. And stopping helping Ukraine will only mean more dead Ukrainians and more dead Russians. Whatever Carlson said is a lie. It's a Putin's propaganda, and he is spreading it. This is exactly what Putin wants.
So it's not simply a fool's errand, it's self-destruction. It's insane, it's cruel, it's abetting the killing of an entire generation of Ukrainians.
That is another lie, and I provided you the plan, Putin's plan, what will happen to Ukraine. I have the whole video about it. Putin wants to kill Ukrainians and want to go further than Ukraine and keep killing people. That is why all the countries around Ukraine wanted to join NATO. That is why Finland joined NATO, and that is why Sweden is joining NATO. That is the only why. So the more ceasefires, which was proven, again, you can watch my video about Donbass, what Russian ceasefire means. Ukraine will cease fire and Russia will keep killing Ukrainians. And only idiot can believe Putin and agree with him on anything after what Putin has done in Ukraine. Ukraine isn't stupid. That's why they will keep fighting, because they either fight or die. And typical Russian propagandist move. No honest person will deny that it's very obvious. No, it isn't obvious. It's a lie. That's why every honest person will deny it. That's exactly why.
And yet somehow the United States Senate, which is always several years behind reality in its perceptions, just a few weeks ago decided to send another $60 billion to the Ukrainian government, which is both corrupt and authoritarian.
This is not true either. No, Ukrainian government isn't corrupt and isn't authoritarian.
They've canceled elections.
No, they didn't cancel the elections. If he knows the laws of Ukraine, when the country is at war, elections are postponed for several reasons. One of them is millions of Ukrainians left the country, and millions are on the front. They cannot vote, it's not possible to organize. And only an idiot or corrupt politician and corrupt Russian propagandist would lie about that.
They banned an entire Christian denomination, and then they killed an American journalist for noting any of this.
And who is they killed, I wonder? Where are the proofs? As to the Christian denomination, this is a lie as well. Yes, they going after Russian Orthodox Church. It's because, if you watched my video, you would know why. Because Russian Orthodox Church, it's the FSB representatives in every country, include Ukraine, especially in Ukraine. These people from the church were caught with Russian money and Russian weapons and Russian everything. With basically fifth column inside your country who is fighting a war. In case Mr. Carlson forgot, Ukraine is fighting a war. The bloodiest war since 1945. That is why the country defending itself. And the Patriarch Kirill personally, former FSB officer, and previous Russian Patriarch as well. That is why Russian Orthodox Church is really in a conflict with Ukrainian Orthodox Church right now. Because it's Russian FSB in the country which Russia trying to kill and attacked unprovokedly since 2014 and fighting a war, which is in 20th of February of this year, would be 10 years.
And yet, the United States Senate proposed under Mitch McConnell a plan to send another $60 billion to Ukraine. Well, imagine the surprise of all rational people around the world to wake up this morning and discover this could actually happen.
It will happen. And it's a good thing, because this is help Ukraine to defend itself. It defending not only themselves, it defending our democracy. Because otherwise, your sons will die in this war. Because Putin will not stop. Not after Ukraine, not after other countries. And if United States is thinking that they're gonna sit quietly and nothing gonna happen to them, it's already happened. Several of your people already dead. They dead in Yemen. I wonder how their families enjoying it. I don't think so. And maybe some of them keep praising Trump. Trump supported Putin, and Putin make it happen. He made it happen in Israel. All these people died because of him. And so is that. And this is just the beginning. Imagine what Putin is trading with Iran with when he buying those drones from them. What does he promising? Perhaps nukes? How would you enjoy several of American cities wiped out by Iran? Thanks to Putin? Well, keep supporting Putin, Mr. Carlson. And we will remember this guy, J.D. Vance, Ohio senator. So this guy is also a traitor to his country and a Putin's puppet, who tried to kill more Ukrainians. I wish you spread out my video with the footage of killed Ukrainians, for these people could see for themselves what's their stupidity, their corruption, and their treachery to their country done to these people. I want them to see that killed Ukrainian family in Kharkov. I want them to see the Ukrainian cities get bombed. Well, eventually it will come to your soil, as it came to Ukraine. And this guy is supporting Putin. Everything they say is complete lie. They're basically saying that Ukraine is a democratic country. Yes, Ukraine is a democratic country. And Zelensky is democratically elected president, which I proved in my videos many times. And no, the support to Ukraine will not prolong this war. The support to Ukraine and giving weapons to Ukraine will finish this war quickly, unless Ukraine will die. And the number 400,000 dead and wounded, it's for Russia, not for Ukraine. If you don't know your numbers, then you shouldn't open your mouth and yap for that kind of audience. Go and find out how many Ukrainians died. It's way, way, way less than Russians. But this is not the point. Ukraine did not start this war, and Ukraine cannot finish it. Because Russia will destroy Ukraine, and they're not even hiding it. It's still published. Those articles I talked in my video, Putin's plan for original plan for Ukraine exposed, they still on the main Russian channel, RIA Novosti. One article was from 2021, another one from 2022, when they thought they're gonna capture Kiev in 3 days. This is fascist plan, which Russia realizing on the occupied territories right now. And this means the death for Ukraine and Ukrainians. That is why they're gonna fight as much as they can, because otherwise they're gonna die. Many of them would be sent to gulags, the country will be destroyed, the whole name of Ukraine will be wiped out of the map of the planet. And these people, like I just showed you, Tucker Carlson and this man, they supporting Putin and they supporting to destruction and murder of Ukrainians.
And Zelensky tells them a story that his war is in the best interest of the whole of Ukraine. Now,
first of all, he didn't tell the story. He told how it is. Ukraine didn't attack anyone. Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. This is not a story. Ukraine is defending itself.
never mind that there are people within Ukraine protesting the draft.
And it's not his war, it's Putin's war. Zelensky didn't start the war. The war started in 2014 by Putin, and in 2022 it was full-scale invasion. Ukraine is defending itself.
Never mind that the average age of a soldier there is pushing 45.
You know what age of soldier in Russia now? They allow to draft officers even if they're 70 years old. So don't tell me about the average age of Ukrainian and so on. So they're completely repeating Russian propaganda word by word. This is disgusting to see. When people from democratic country who has no reason to lie, Carlson is intelligent and wealthy man, and so is Elon Musk. They absolutely have no reason to bend the knee to Russian dictator and spread his lies. So these two guys spreading Russian lies and propaganda. It's just so disgusting to see. I'm just really disgusted with that. And they talking about morals. How about killed Ukrainians all over the country? On 29th, for example, of December. All over the country. Maternity wards, hospitals, everything. And Russia was killing them and keep killing them and bombing infrastructure, and Putin admitting it himself. Yes, we're doing it, and smiles. This is Ukrainian family who just get killed in Kharkiv because of Russian drone attack, while Americans playing their political games. This was 35 years old Olga, who was on maternity leave, and she has 10-month-old Pavlo, who buried with her in the same grave. Her husband died, and another 2 boys. One was 7 years old and another one almost 4. This is what Russia has done. The funeral of that Putyatin family in Kharkov. Youngest boy was just a baby. And that's what happened. You're welcome to watch that. I'll give you the link and so on. 14 homes were on fire. 3,700 square meters. 7 civilians died. 3 children among them. And these guys are truly thinking, no, they're not truly thinking. They're just lying. And we will remember that. This is why I'm posting it on my channel. For we remember that. Because after Ukraine will win the war, these guys would say, oh, we never said that. It never happened. These are the facts. And this is the proof. I won't comment much anymore on that speech of Carlson. In the end, I want to add to the video that I just made a video. Navalny has been killed in Russian jail. And this is exactly what it is about. And Tucker Carlson, he just recently returned from Moscow. And I just show you how he praising Putin and how Putin is wonderfully running the country and how safe everything is. A Russian oppositional leader just murdered by Putin. Another one. There are no alive Russian oppositional leaders of a scale of Navalny left in Russia or anywhere anymore, because Putin killed Boris Nemtsov and Putin killed Navalny. Before that, Navalny was locked up in jail, tortured in a little colony, prisoner colony in the Arctic, where basically he couldn't get any attention or medical attention or anything. And before that, Navalny was poisoned, as you can see in my video, the footage of that. And about 27 times Navalny was thrown into the concrete box called Shizo. He was locked up with a prisoner who never washed himself, and the stink was unbelievable. He was locked up near to the prisoner who was screaming all day and all night long. Navalny was sleep deprived and tortured, and now Putin killed him. This is how safe Russia is. And Tucker Carlson knows that. But he chose to lie and support bloody dictator Putin. And it is terrible, disgusting, and this is against what United States need. This is against the interest of the United States. Because Putin is a threat to the United States, and Tucker Carlson is supporting Putin. For love or for money, that's up to you to decide.
Quid pro quo.
Tucker. Putin already made Russia great again. And now he's improving Ukraine. Wonder who is next. Stop Putin, help Ukraine, learn the truth and stay informed. Thank you for watching. See you later.